it NAWSP. Today, during our LinkedIn Live, I had the distinct pleasure and honor of speaking with some of Medallia's women in sales. We have today Ariel Jones, Adriana Jimenez, and Susan Killian, and we're going to talk about steering your career, the roadmap to professional success for women in sales. So, before we get into those hot questions and those topics, I'd like the ladies to introduce themselves. Ariel, please tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Cynthia. Hi, everybody. My name is Ariel Jones. I am proudly based in Houston, Texas, and have been with Medallia about 2 years now. In the simplest way put, I'm obsessed with creating the best human experiences. And of those humans, I'm a little bit partial to patients and care providers. So I'm a consultant on the healthcare team at Medallia. And in that work, I get to help drive the best experiences for the world's largest health system. So nice to meet you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ariel. Miss Jimenez.
Hi, so I'm Adriana Jimenez. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been at Medallia for about 8 years now. I'm based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I'll be honest, I started as a solutions consultant and had no idea what I was getting myself into. So I'm happy to chat with anybody afterwards to talk about just changing your career altogether and starting a career in a sales support role. I've learned a whole lot. I started as an individual contributing solutions consultant, and now have the great pleasure and honor of leading a team of solutions consultants here at Medallia who are focused on our B2C verticals. So think of retail, restaurant, hospitality, and travel, automotive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a wonderful, wonderful group of individuals that I get the pleasure to essentially work for. I consider myself a servant leader. So it's great to be here.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Susan.
Everyone, Susan Killian. I Medallia about 4 years. I am based in our Boston office. I live in Windsor, New Hampshire. Have been in sales 25 years. I've spent the first 50 contributor and have spent the last in sales teams. Like Adriana, I business to consumer verticals at Medallia. Absolutely passionate about developing particularly female sales talent. So I'm very excited about the conversation. Thank you.
Wonderful. We are thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for your time today. So for those who are not familiar with Medallia, who wants to explain what you do and where I see you, but I don't see you? Ariel.
Oh, well, thank you. Medallia actually understands the end-to-end consumer or a patient or customer experience. And we do that by continuous listening. So you may not see us, but I tell people all the time, if you go to your email and you type in Medallia, I can almost guarantee you that you have at least one Medallia survey from one of your favorite brands. And so we understand and listen to customer feedback, and then we help organizations act on that feedback in real time to improve the experience, no matter where they are in the journey with that brand or organization.
That is huge. And you're right. I did do that. I typed in Medallia, and besides emails from you guys, it was survey. And I thought, it's amazing. You're everywhere. You are absolutely everywhere. So let's get into some deep questions. Susan, how important is it to identify goals when you want to steer your career?
Oh, I think it is very, very important to do that. Especially for everybody here, right? If we're in goal oriented, I think it's really not just the long-term goals, but more importantly, to continue goals as you're having career development. It's with your leadership team, with your peers, because along the way, as you're having these conversations that can help you close the gaps that you need to achieve those goals. The other thing say is that a lot of people get specific goals, and one of my 25-year career in sales, change your goals. Your goals are going to be full opportunities come along. Important to embrace that, to be open to the way.
I love that flexibility. And sometimes, just like you said, Susan, we have a laser focused goal, but we're not flexible in the approach. And I think that flexibility is important because you know what the old saying is, we make plans and God laughs, because our path may not be according to what he or whomever is in charge is going to plan for us. So Ariel, when you think about some of the things that you've had to do to elevate your sales career, could you list a couple of them that were important or pivotal?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the primary things is connecting with leaders in the organization, like Andriana and Susan, women who have been successful in their roles already, and getting to pick their brain. I have the fortunate opportunity to report to women leaders and have since I joined Medallia. And it's really helped to accelerate my growth within Medallia. So I would say that one of the primary things is being able to build relationships with those who have done it before you, who can kind of help you navigate the different things that you're going to encounter early in your sales career. A second thing I would say is that be aligned in the goals that are most important to where you want to go next, right? So being clear and communicating with your leadership on what next looks like in your career and making sure that your short-term and your long-term goals, to Susan's point, align with those overall professional next steps that you're trying to achieve.
Now, I'm going to throw something out here, and it may not be popular, but I hear it all the time. It's one of those things that we talk about in the dark corners of networking events. Women come to me and they say, I will go to a female leader and I'm not supported, or I can't get the support I want from women. Anybody want to debunk that?
Well, I don't mind following up really quickly, and
Okay.
then happy to hear from both of my colleagues. I would say that you have to be vulnerable, and sometimes you're going to be met with exactly what you're looking for. And in my experience, more often than not, more than what I'd hoped for in the right connections. A lot of it has to do with the culture of the organization. When I first joined Medallia, I was like, there's no way these women are this nice and this genuine. Like somebody's making it up. And I was waiting for it to happen. And fortunately, a lot of the relationships that I've been able to foster are as genuine as they seemed in the beginning. And then also when you're not met with what you hope for, there's lessons in that as well. What did you learn from that? What did feel good about that you don't want to experience again? And what can you use to pass down to somebody else when it's your opportunity to shepherd or steward somebody in their growth as well?
Yes, that is so important that you talk about the culture, because there are so many cultures out there where it is a dog eat dog backstabbing type of culture among
Mhm.
men and among women. I am so happy to hear about your experiences, and that gives me hope. That gives me hope. Adriana, let's talk
Mhm.
about burnout. It's common. You know, as
Very
women,
common.
we wear multiple hats depending upon the hour. We're homeschoolers, we're teachers, we're mothers, we're employees. How do you balance it all to make sure that you manage your priorities, not necessarily your time?
Yeah, no, I kind of love and hate this question at the same time. I think it's funny. I'm not a fan of the term work-life balance because especially balance, because I think when the minute we hear the word balance, we initially think that everything has to be 50-50 in terms of work and then life, right? And the truth of the matter is that it's never that way. Like I feel like there are times throughout the year where you do have to dive more into work or be more focused, or significant points of a fiscal year, right, where work is going to ramp up, and maybe some things in the life side go to the wayside, right? but then inevitably it'll shift, right? So I think it's just finding the right way to kind of navigate that way and giving yourself the space and the grace to do that. I recently, and it's funny, Susan reminded me of this morning, like I went on a sabbatical. It's a wonderful program that Medallia offers for its employees once you hit 5 years of continuous service to the organization. And so I was able to take a step back. And I'll be honest, I didn't even realize how tired I was. But I was on sabbatical and I would end each day still exhausted. And I said to myself, how is that even possible? I'm not even working. And it's to your point, Cynthia, like I'm still a mom. I still have a household to take care of. I have a husband who won't admit it, but I do take care of him too. You know, there's all of these other things. But one thing that I was very cognizant of when I went on my sabbatical was I'm going to do the things that bring me joy. And I'm going to focus on these things. And I have a lot of hobbies and things that I'm very, very passionate about. And I was very intentional with how I use my time in doing those hobbies. And I made a promise to myself that when I go back to work, I'm going to continue to do these things because it allows me to show up happier. I'm going to be a better leader. I'm going to be a better coworker. And they're just energizing things. And so I don't have a formula or a secret, sauce as to how do you find that balance. I think it's just being nice to yourself. Talk to yourself the way that you talk to, like if you're a plant person, they say if you talk to plants a certain way, they will bloom for you and they will grow beautifully. Talk to your plants, talk to yourself the way that you would talk to your plants or to your children or your loved ones. You have to love yourself. You have to put yourself first because you can't give to others if you're not in a good place. So
That is so true. That is so true. It reminds me of the one wise woman, I forget because I know so many, who said we have to be able to and be willing to give ourselves grace, the grace that you would a sick friend. And I thought that's powerful because sometimes we talk to ourselves in ways we would never talk to anybody on the street, but yet we are so hard on ourselves. So I love what you said about giving yourself, the grace to be not okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
It's okay to be not
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Susan, how does Medallia support women to be proactive when seeking new opportunities?
I just wanted for you.
Oh, the audio is still coming in and out. Ariel, would you mind taking that question while we work on Susan's audio?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of different things that come to mind for how Medallia has supported my growth. And one, I hate to go back to it again, but it's the truth. It's just a culture of open communication. The opportunity to share what my goals are in the organization, what I'd like my next steps to look like, the opportunity to challenge things when I don't understand them. And I think that is a type of support that when I was interviewing for this role, I didn't realize was so important, right? I didn't realize that, before this point, I'd never pushed back in these ways. And it was so encouraged. So I think that's one of the ways that it's fostered me with new opportunities, just the ability to explore and ask, well, what is this? And how could this fit into the next stages of my career? And then what can align with that type of work? And the second thing is mentorship and sponsorship. I think that I've had the opportunity to create great mentor relationships since being at Medallia, which have allowed me opportunities to connect with groups outside of my day-to-day working team. And I think that's been a really important accelerator in my growth in sales. So to your point again, and about it's not always easy to make those connections with other women. But I think in the spirit of evolving and finding common ground that we can all relate to in this world of sales, and it's very focused, sometimes narrow focus on reaching specific goals that are around data. How can we encourage each other, the things that drive those outcomes with that connection and those relationships?
Sure, absolutely. Adriana, who would you say is ultimately responsible for your growth in your career?
All of them.
And tell me
I
why.
am.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, and I say that like bullishly only because I think that, and I mean in general, right? I think individuals really need to take ownership of their own career. I think that if you have aspirations to go down a certain path, you should make those aspirations known to your manager or leader. Finding mentors and figuring out what are my real strengths and what do I really enjoy doing and how can you align a role, to those strengths and passions is also equally important. For me, I've been blessed with having wonderful leaders who see probably way more potential in me than I see in myself. They're the ones that have nudged me along to try new things and to challenge me. I also, a big shout out to Elena. She took a chance on me and she hired me. Elena Hutchison. She leads our product marketing and go to market strategy, and she's phenomenal. And I think that a lot of the success that I've seen here at Medallia can be attributed to the fact that this company has not only a CEO that's super passionate about women and female leaders, but we have amazing role models to follow here as well, in Elena and Sarka and our CFO Lynn, several individuals. So I would say a combination of both of those things. So I definitely wouldn't be here without that. And also obviously my own mom. She's a strong role model as well.
That's incredible. We're better together, right?
That's right. Yeah.
We're better together. Adriana, you mentioned something about your skills, amplifying them. Ariel, could you talk about the skills gap? How do you honestly take a look at where you are deficient in things, identifying those skills, and then getting help to advance those skills?
I think that's a great question. The first thing that I'm going to say is feedback, right? I work for a feedback company, and we are very big on getting feedback, right? But it also it says a lot about the culture of the organization that I have leaders that are willing to give it in ways that are actually constructive, to give me actionable items to come out of that feedback. And amongst me and my colleagues, I think that I work with some of the smartest people that I've ever met. And I don't believe that I have a gap. I believe that all of us are very high performing individuals and that we sharpen each other, and that we are given a platform to continuously sharpen each other in new ways. And I have no shame in saying that I steal stuff from my colleagues all the time to make sure that I'm performing at the same level that they are.
Yes.
And that's encouraged, and it should continue to be encouraged. So I think that it really goes to being vulnerable enough to ask, where do I need to improve? What about this situation could help the outcome be different moving forward? I personally, I take a few minutes to process things. So when I'm talking to my leaders and I'm asking for feedback, I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay. I'm sure they're like, how did you take that? And I'm like, well, I need a minute. I know how I process information, and I have the ability to process information in the way that's best for me, and that's collaborative, and to get, perspectives from multiple people. And I think that it just continues to help me sharpen my skills. And then even opportunities like this, and realizing other people across the organization that I can continue to reach out to and connect with, even following this conversation. So I would say that those are the things that really help me improve my skills.
Yes. And like you said, in marketing, they call them swipe files. You don't reinvent the wheel. You just take best practices, those proven things that people have done, and you implement them in your own world. You save time, energy, and most likely the outcome is spectacular. Susan, let's try again, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. Can you give us a couple of sentences to make sure we can hear you? No, we
No.
can't hear you. Okay. Well, we'll just have to do another LinkedIn Live with just Susan. Just Susan. Okay. Adriana, how do you stay current and up to date on industry trends and developments?
That's a great question. I don't have a lot of time. I think a lot of working women, especially working women in sales, don't have a ton of time. I mean, very, I mean, at a tactical level, I rely heavily on Google News alerts and, articles, events like these. I'm a big fan of podcasts. So there's several sales focused and SC focused podcasts that I really enjoy listening to, because I feel like I can learn a whole lot just from the folks that they have on those shows. And so that for me, that's a major way. I think also, I mean, we have the privilege of getting to talk to customers within the many verticals that we support or try to target, right? And so they themselves are open with us about the challenges that they're facing. So I think it's two multiple pronged approach, but I do try my best to, dedicate some time every week to just listen or to read up on what's going on in terms of the industry. But we get a whole lot of information from our customers from an industry perspective as well.
So I can only imagine how much information you are inundated with. I mean, you said you're listening to podcasts, you're looking on Google News, Google Alerts, all that. How do you filter out the noise from what matters most, Ariel?
I would say prioritization is something that I've definitely had to develop at Medallia, because not only are there things constantly developing across, the industry. For me, healthcare is what I focus on, but also we're constantly developing solutions to solve those problems at the same time. And so really being able to, join the organization-wide calls where we're understanding what are priorities and forecasts for the upcoming quarter or year, and really leaning on what, as Adriana said, what our customers are saying that we're working with currently are the most important for their upcoming budget seasons, really help us to prioritize, okay, well, here are the lowest hanging fruit. Here's where we really need to help solve these problems because they're impacting the organizations that we're serving the most. And ultimately, we're trying to solve their problems more than anything else, right? So partnering with them to understand how we can prioritize their biggest problems and then what would be the nice to haves shortly following that, and making sure we prioritize those as a second tier.
There's some things I want to come back to in that. Not everybody has the privilege of having a tool like yours, right? So if you didn't have that tool, what would you do, Adriana? How would you be able to get feedback without the technology that you have?
When you're saying feedback from who exactly? I'm just trying to better
From your
understand.
customers, because you're all about customer
Gotcha.
experience, and that feedback is a gift. Not everybody has access to that feedback. They work for a company who may not be prioritizing that feedback like Medallia does.
Yeah, I think that's where the importance of just like building your network and having relationships is important. And just, I know it's like, it may not be like quantitatively sound insights that you walked away from, but there's still legitimate things and nuggets of information that people can pass on, when you're having those peer-to-peer sort of conversations about what's going on in the market or in the industry.
Yes. So Ariel, have you ever heard of an IBM, an individual business meeting with your leaders?
Yes.
Okay. How often do you have your individual business meeting with your direct leader?
Well, I meet with my direct leader weekly, and I can honestly say we probably prioritize my individual business as much as my business for the organization. And that is actually a new motion that was a new motion for me at Medallia, that consistent communication. And then I would say that somewhere where we focus and revisit our goals is Medallia has a quarterly review check-in. And that's when I have the opportunity to revisit, well, what did we talk about your biggest goals were for the last quarter and for the year as a whole? Are you tracking to that? Where do we need to make some pivots? I would say, well, let me stop there. That's how often they happen. That was your question.
Okay. I am going someplace with that. So I was following you where you were leading and all that good stuff. That is good. So in those individual business meetings or the ones that you have, how important is it as women for us to say, here are my goals, here's what I need help with? Because we're talking about steering your career. And Adriana, you said earlier, it's up to us ultimately. But
Yeah.
oftentimes we get in those meetings and we learn about the organization's goals for us, but we don't come back and say, well, here's the path I want to take to leadership. Tell me how to get there. How do we overcome that?
I
So to
think,
me,
yeah, was that to Ariel or was that to me?
To Adriana, please.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's just envisioning being intentional with your one-on-ones. If you're with your direct manager, I think that if I take the style of like direct reports, you come to me about what you want to chat about in our one-on-ones. And so I think you have to be very intentional with what you want to discuss, like make it part of your agenda, right? So and if you're not taking the time to think about that stuff, it's easy to get caught in like the race of things and the day-to-day of stuff. But I think at least at the beginning of every year or whatever time of year that makes sense most, like envision where you are, like what's your path, what are your goals, not just at work, but broader goals that maybe, you think it would be helpful for your manager to be aware of. I think about, I have SCs on my team who obviously want to exceed their targets every year, but some of them also have personal goals. Maybe one wants to start a business. Maybe there's other things that they can contribute to the organization and learn from, so they can then take those learnings and apply them elsewhere in some of their personal goals. So I think it's just important to if you're not having those types of conversations with your manager, like just take a step back and try to understand, like, why aren't they happening?
Mhm.
Most of the time, I think it just boils down to the fact that people aren't necessarily always comfortable with just coming forward with those types of conversations. And you got to start somewhere. Is it going to be awkward in the beginning? 100%. You're going to feel awkward and your manager's going to feel awkward too. And I think that that's totally normal, but embrace the awkwardness, right? That's the only way that you're going to be able to move forward. If you're not getting it there, I think you should also consider looking elsewhere for like a mentor or somebody to guide you, whether it's in your organization or maybe a previous boss or somebody else that you've connected with that you really vibe with. Like, again, nobody's going to do that legwork for you. It's something that everybody has to just, I encourage everybody to just take the time to do that for themselves.
Yes, yes. You know what they say here in the South, a closed mouth doesn't get fed.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
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 Susan, I know it's snowing up there in New Hampshire, but we really want to hear from you. Can we try again? Oh my
Oh
gosh. Okay.
no.
All right. I appreciate you trying, Susan. Oh gosh. Um, Ariel, have you ever made a lateral move to further your career?
yes, I have made a
Okay.
lateral. I had to think about it for a second because this was a growth opportunity for me. But I've made a lateral move in my career from operational work within healthcare organizations into experience specifically,
Mhm.
because I knew that I would really love to focus on advancing that part of my career. So prior to joining Medallia, I made that shift, and that's how I was introduced to Medallia. And I
Mm.
realized I was like, this is the best combination of both worlds. The opportunity to be disruptive and drive the industry forward, and
Mhm.
in an industry that I care a lot about.
So, talk to us about the process of, because I'm sure there was a T chart and maybe some pros and cons of, and you've got someone on this shoulder saying this and this shoulder saying that. What was the process for you deciding, I am going to make this lateral move because I'm beginning with the end in mind and it'll help me get where I want to go?
Truthfully, that decision was probably much easier than the decision I made before that, which was that I was going to toss almost a decade of pre-med preparation away and not go to medical school anymore at all. So that was a lot more disruptive. I think that what really led me to make the decision to make a shift like that, and what I think anyone should consider is this what you want to make an impact in the world doing?
Mhm.
Is this how you want to wake up every day and contribute your talent and your skills to driving something forward. Because if not, then that investment is still going to come up short because your passion is going to be short. And if your passion doesn't meet your investment and your hard work, I truly believe that yes, you can be successful, but you probably won't be fulfilled. And I think that I've always been blessed with parents that encourage me to follow my heart. And so I think the first thing was having a conversation with them, the people that supported me the most.
Mhm.
And when they were essentially like, well, we believe in you, go after what you want. I was like, well, why didn't I believe that much in myself from the beginning? Why didn't I know outright that it was okay to make a new decision that was better for me and more aligned with what I wanted? And from that point forward, I knew that any decision was going to be fairly easy because I was going to be clear on what my goals were and what impact I was trying to make.
It's so important to have those around us who believe in us until we can believe in ourselves. And sometimes we just need someone to say, you know what, I believe in you. You can do this. And then you look in the mirror and you say, well, why not me? Right?
Mhm.
Why
Mhm.
not me? Adriana,
Yeah.
if you could talk to a woman who is in her first year of sales, she loves it, but doesn't know what she wants to sell, how would you advise her to find the right product or service?
That is wow, that's a really great question. Wow. I mean, I think it's so funny because I think and I'm going to take like a tech sales slant if that's okay. But it's interesting because I think that's one of the easy ways to just think about like what are some of the platforms that you really enjoy working with, right? Or using day to day, because if you're very passionate about that, it's going to be easier to sell others as to why they should adopt your technology or your platform or your product. So if you are a fanatic of a particular brand or product, I think that that's a wonderful place to start because then chances are it won't feel like work.
Right.
Chances are you won't have to be reading directly from a slide and regurgitating what you were taught in your sales boot camp. You're
Yes.
speaking from legitimate experience in a place of passion, and people feed off of that. People can
Yes.
tell when you're not excited about what you're selling. It's interesting, like, I've had recruiters reach out and say, hey, we've got like this SC role, come check us out. And I'm like, what do you do exactly? And then when I find out like it's nothing really crazy or like really interesting, I'm like, I can't possibly get other people motivated to sell that. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna pass. But I mean, I think it's like it's a huge component to just make sure that you can you yourself are very passionate about what you're selling.
Yes, yes. Susan added a comment. She said, "Find something that you believe in and are passionate about, something that excites you." So I love to see that you're both on the same page.
Yeah.
Ariel, let's say we're in a company. We go into our boss and we say, "I want this position. XYZ position was posted. I think I would be super impactful in this role." And your boss says to you, "Not now. You're not the right fit." What do you do?
That is a great question. Um, I think that there is some real reflection that should go in, at least personally, and even a conversation, definitely in that direct conversation with your leadership as to why they feel that way.
Mhm.
Um, One thing that I've learned since joining Medallia is that, speak with the data, be able to represent yourself and communicate why you feel like you're a fit for that role. And then
Mhm.
also require that same level of response from the person who is not willing to support you.
Mm.
And if they are able to provide that to you, then at that point you have a decision to make, right? At the end of the day, you're not bound to their lack of a recommendation necessarily. Um, but I definitely would have a direct conversation. And if you are prepared and equipped with the data to support yourself and you're fit for that role, then they should also be prepared with the same response if they don't feel ready to support you.
Right, right. Too often I see women say, "Okay," and then they go on and they spend the next 2 years in the same position. Just because someone says no, just like in sales, is that no forever or is that no for right now?
Mhm.
And if, like you said, Ariel, if you have a strong business case for why you should be considered for a role, shame on you if you take that one person's response and let that dictate your future. When we are steering our careers, I'm sure you would agree, Adriana, it is up to us to
Mhm.
overcome the no's with either data, facts, experience, whatever, because we are ultimately, like you said, in charge of our careers.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
We,
And
we are
it's funny because if you do get a no from like a hiring manager or your own supervisor, for example, like that's really sad because then it's a flag that you're not you like that shouldn't come to a surprise. Like
Mhm.
your boss shouldn't be surprised that you're expressing interest in a role, right? Or that you have intentions of applying to a role. Like that those should be happening in one-on-one conversations on a week-to-week basis. And again, making your goals known to your supervisor, understanding from them like what are some of the gaps that you need to fill, and you should be working towards filling those gaps so that those again those I don't think that those no's should necessarily happen. um, and yes, it's definitely okay to challenge and ask
Mhm.
questions in a way to help clarify what else you need to work on. um, don't ever just take no and just walk away and not dive deeper to better understand what you need to be working on.
Right. Holly, I love this comment from her. She said it's okay to challenge and ask questions kindly and respectfully. And
Mhm.
remember, your direct supervisor may be having an off day, may not see the whole picture, may be on their
Yeah.
way to another organization. So, what's wrong with asking others what their thoughts are? A lot
Absolutely.
of women say, I'm not ready for leadership. I don't have any leadership experience, but yet I want to be in leadership. Ariel,
Yeah.
what are some ways, maybe one or two, that women can get the leadership experience without the title?
Well, I think as an individual contributor, there's opportunities to lead in a lot of the work that I'm doing. I think in technology sales in particular, there are so many things that don't exist yet. There's always something that can be improved and be better. And oftentimes, women, in my experience, are thinking strategically in that way. How can this be a process that we can recreate after this individual interaction? And how can we scale this in a unique way? But what I had to learn, and that even goes back to your last question, is that if you can't communicate what you're contributing, if you can't communicate or represent for yourself what you built and what process and the impact of that, then nobody else can benefit from it, right? And nobody else can advocate for you on behalf of that.
Love that. Love that. What about leading committees or leading in an ERG? Adriana, any thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I am an active member of a couple of our Latinx community at Medallia, and I'm not one of the leads of the ERG, but I do have spoken in the past quite often with the leads of that ERG, and they've they've mentioned like it's a great opportunity, right, to be able to get the experience because you are tasked with bringing this community up, creating it, especially at the beginning of the creation of an ERG. You have to figure out, how do I increase membership?
Mhm.
What are some of the programs that we have to do? And it's a nice change of pace, but it also gives you the opportunity to experience things that you probably would never have the opportunity to do in like your day-to-day role. So great opportunities if you have those at your organizations, like to raise your hand and to volunteer. It's a wonderful way of leading. I want to go back to what Ariel mentioned about sure not getting the opportunity to lead without having a leadership role. And I think that that's so spot on. Like
Mhm.
a title is just a title. Like
Yeah.
you have the power to influence people day to day in your existing role and to exhibit leadership traits and qualities in all of your work and in the way in which you engage with your coworkers. So I think we can't lose sight of that. There's a way to informally lead people, whether it's mentoring a new team member, people who just join your organization, maybe you're showing them the ropes. That's a wonderful way to gain some sort of leadership experience. So don't get so pigeonholed on thinking that I can't become, I want to become a leader and I can't lead until I get that title. That's so untrue. In fact, most of the people that end up in leadership positions were already doing the job before they got the promotion. And so just being more aware of those things and the small day-to-day things that you can be doing to make an impact, a leadership impact without the role.
Yes, absolutely. For those of you who are attending, we want to answer your questions. So please, in the chat, let us know what's on your mind, because we've got an expert panel here and they know their stuff. So please ask them questions. There is a known fact that when an employee amplifies their brand, their personal brand, it naturally amplifies the company. But too many of my followers, and the majority of them are women in sales, will say, how do I promote myself on social, but not, and also honor my company? Is there a way to do both, do you think, Ariel?
Absolutely. I think that I think I had the same questions before finding mentorship, and I've had the wonderful opportunity of being mentored by our head of healthcare, Tony Land at Medallia, who's introduced me to a lot of different leadership opportunities. And, one of the things she challenged me to do is to post weekly on LinkedIn, and I will admit that I'm not great at it. I don't feel like I always have something unique to say, but in general, I posted more than I ever had, prior to that point, because I had the confidence to understand that every part of my life has contributed to where I've gotten to today. My experiences prior to joining Medallia very much so contribute to the success in my role now. So why wouldn't I continue to contribute those things on a broader scale? And those things, to your point, still drive forward improving human experiences, which is what my organization's goal is as well.
Yes. Adriana, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's not easy. I totally understand where somebody who has this question is potentially coming from. Like, you don't want to come off as too much of one thing or the other. And so finding that balance is definitely tough. Like Ariel, I am not great at sharing things on social media. And so what I try my best to do is support the brave souls who put it all out there and just add my 2 bits of wisdom or commentary. But I think that it's important, because I think if you're going to show up, do so in a genuine and authentic way. I think it's important to just be honest with all facets of what make you and you as a person, and every person is special. So I think if wherever you can find where those two kind of worlds collide and come together, I think is wonderful. And those are the things that you should definitely promote, because I feel like that's going to allow you to show up as your most authentic self to the rest of the world and to yourself as well. So I think for me, I do try to find a slant anytime that again, going back to our Latinx ERG and something that's related to, customer experience. Anytime I get the opportunity to support those sort of initiatives, I do that and promote them on social media. There's also, as everybody's aware, there's organizations, I feel like, for everything. And so I try to engage in those organizations and repost. I'm guilty. Some people love this and some people hate it, but bilingual posts are my thing. I love to do it all the time. So I mean, there's little ways in
Yeah.
which you can kind of add a little bit of flavor to
Yes.
your post, but not stray too far away from what, the organization is trying to achieve as well.
Love that. Yes. I'm all about inclusivity. So why not post it in a different language or a different slant or whatever? That's uniquely you and that is truly authentic. And that's part of your UVP, your unique value proposition. Not everybody can do that. I'd have to use Google Translate and I'd probably end up selling somebody's boots. So I applaud you for that. I applaud you for that. Holly, great question. What are your favorite books, podcasts, or blogs? Ariel, I want to hear from you. And then Susan, if you could put them in the chat. And Adriana, yours too. Books, podcasts, and blogs, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that one of my favorite books in the last year that I think is really valuable for this conversation specifically is The Memo by Minda Harts, What Women of Color Need to Know to Have a Seat at the Table. I've actually read it a couple of times now and will probably read it, on an annual basis, but definitely highly recommend that book.
Okay. You have a favorite podcast or a blog?
I have to think on a favorite. I think that I kind of hop around podcasts quite a bit. I will be honest, I'm not a loyal podcast listener. But I'll have to think on that for a second.
Okay. If you need to go on your phone and see the last podcast you listened to, that's perfectly allowed. Perfectly allowed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Adriana, what about you? Blogs,
I have-
podcasts, and books.
I have so many.
I'm ready. I'm always looking for good ones.
I don't have a ton of books. If it's not an HBR article, like I really don't have the time to read them. And frankly, like I kind of find them a little boring after a little while. So I can't get through a whole book. I'll get the Cliffs Notes. There's that specific app that also you can just like listen to it, the Blinkist app, or I can't remember what it's called, Susan. That's amazing because it just makes it so much easier. But in terms of podcasts, so many. There's one called Super Managers, and it's developed by a tech company called Fellow. And Fellow is an app that I use to help manage my one-on-ones and making sure that I, as a manager, am showing up intentionally to one-on-ones and accurately capturing notes. Love that platform. So I highly recommend them. I highly recommend also, if you are in pre-sales, the Pre-Sales Collective is an amazing podcast and just community in general. I learned so much from the leaders that go on there and individual contributors. It's such an amazing community and membership. Always learn something from that podcast. I think one of my favorites is probably Radical Candor. I love that. Again, mine are more focused on being just a better leader in general. It's the craft. To me, I see it as a craft and something that I'm consistently working on. And then the last one I would say is HBR's Women at Work. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful podcast as well.
Have you seen their latest book on thriving in a male-dominated industry?
I have. Yes. Haven't read it though.
Yeah. Thank you, Adriana. Let's see. The book, the app that Adriana mentioned is called
Fellow.
Super Managers, right?
Yeah, well, it's Fellow is the app, and it's not free. I think there's like a free version, but they also have an accompanying podcast that they also release. And it doesn't really focus on the app that they've developed. It's all about being the best manager that you can be.
Fantastic. And Susan says she does not have a favorite podcast. She relies on people like Adriana to make recommendations. I love that. Yes. And Susan says she just read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Maybe that's how it's fiction, but great lessons about women in tech working with men. She highly recommends that. All right, here's the $1 million question. Looking back over your professional and personal life, what one thing would you have told your college graduate self?
Just one?
Ariel. Just one thing. If you could look at her and say, it's today's graduation day. If you remember nothing else in life, it is this. What would you tell her, Ariel?
One thing. I would just say, you've got this. You're good enough.
Yes.
In all things, it's all going to work out.
Yes.
That's the simplest way to put it in the biggest net, that you're good enough and it's going to work out.
Adriana.
I would tell myself, you need to chill out.
Chill out, okay?
Chill out. You're trying to go 1,000 miles per hour, and it's just not gonna happen. And in all facets of my life, I was that one that had like the plan. By this age, I need to do this. By this age, I need to do that. By this, and it's just too much. And then it all kind of blew up in my face. So if I could go back, I would have said to myself, definitely chill out, enjoy the journey, because it's a journey. Yeah. And it's goes in multiple directions all the time. And to Ariel's point, you got this, you can do it.
You do. Yeah. And Susan, take risks, she says. The only way to get over your fears is to face them. You are better than you think you are. That is so true. She also added, you will not grow if you only do things that you're 100% comfortable doing. Look for opportunities to be uncomfortable. That's what builds confidence. Growth is right beyond your comfort zone, right, Susan? Yeah, it is. There's another question, actually two more. And Malika, you must be in my head, because I'd like to know, what is your go-to mantra or saying, that I am this statement, when the imposter syndrome, that little voice says, who are you to think that you can ... So I'm asking all three of you, what is your quote or saying that tells that imposter syndrome, you know what, get in the back seat, I'm driving this bus?
I don't have a saying, but I have a thing that I visualize in my head. If you're willing, if you want to hear it, I literally tell myself that I'm Beyonce. I say, if Beyonce can do it, I can do this. I literally think I'm Beyonce, and I tell myself everything I do turns to gold.
Man, that is fire. That is fire. I love that. Ariel, what about you?
Well, something my dad would always say to me growing up, any challenge, and still says to me if I call him on a bad day, is that the only person that can stop you is yourself. And so anytime I feel like I'm met with imposter syndrome, I say, the only person that can stop you is yourself. And then it always followed with, he says, to claim it out loud. I'm so happy and grateful now. So, before this, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm the best LinkedIn live speaker anyone's ever heard,
Yes.
And so that's my go-to.
Susan says, I love that, Ariel. Thank you. Susan says, you are here because you earned it. No one gave this to you. You worked hard to get here. And I think too often we forget that we have earned everything. We've earned the right to sit at the table, the right to build our own table, the right to be in this position in front of this prospect, the right to receive this promotion. We've worked hard. And even in every lesson, we've earned that lesson and earned the right to use the experience of that lesson to make us better instead of bitter. Right? Yeah. I love the fact that you asked that question, Malika, because the reason I put up these posters behind me was so that when I look in the Zoom reflection, I see the women who have been trailblazers, who have overcome so much adversity. And I figure, if they can do it, I can do it too. So I always ask myself, when that moment of imposter syndrome comes in, why not me? Why not me? Cynthia, you are enough without even trying. And that's on my bathroom mirror. Yes. Okay. Yes, it is. Let's see. How, as women, would you handle or manage a near narcissist sales manager? We've all had them. Come on now. We've all had them.
I mean, truthfully, I've worked to change my environment.
Mm.
I think that your environment impacts your output a lot. And
Mhm.
I don't think that there are certain things that you shouldn't be willing to withstand if they can't be communicated through.
Yes. Yes. You know what they say, either you can change your environment or you change your environment,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? You've got choices. No one is stuck. No one is a victim, right? Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Adriana, you want to add to that?
No, I just
No?
totally agree. I can't I I can't even imagine. It makes me sad knowing that there are people who have to deal with that. It's something I've never had to experience, so I couldn't even speak to it. I'll be vulnerable enough to say I have no idea what I would do, but I knowing myself and my lack of patience, I would totally be out of there in a second. So yeah,
We don't have to put up with that. There are too many organizations like Medallia who will celebrate you instead of tolerate you, right?
totally. Yeah.
Exactly. Susan says, surround yourself with people that will help you grow and don't be afraid to walk away from bad situations.
Yep.
Someone once told me, Cynthia, you were looking for a job when you found this one, so keep on looking. Yeah, you were looking.
Yeah.
Quite honestly. You have to. Yes, yes. Reggie wants to know, is the Super Manager app only on Android?
No, no.
Okay.
So the fellow, I mean, I don't know if they have an app version. It is a desktop version
Okay.
application or software that you can use, and then the podcast should be available wherever podcasts are available. So
Okay.
yeah.
Lena, if you wouldn't mind putting up Ariel's, Adriana's, and Susan's LinkedIn profile, because I know there are some people who want to connect with them. When you send the connection request, please remind them that you saw them on the LinkedIn Live and personalize that connection request. We don't want to send blind connection requests. Ladies, we've got about 3.5 minutes before we wrap up today. I'd like to know from each of you, what is your one word, your guiding word for 2023? Ariel.
More.
More.
That's my
Adriana.
guiding word.
Yeah, more.
Mine is joy.
Joy. Yes. That's so good. I know. I echo that sentiment too, Susan. What's yours, Susan? Self-care. Okay. Okay. For those of you who are attending in the chat, tell us your word for 2023. I want to hear all the good ones. All the good ones. And while we're doing that, I think Darlene had a question. Stretch goals, okay, that was a comment. Stretch goals, business, and personal goals are required. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me on LinkedIn Live. I know that there are a lot of people who are going to get value from this. If they didn't watch it live, they will. It lives forever, so they will see it. Any last parting words for our audience?
I would
Keep
just
fighting the
say,
good fight.
yeah, exactly. Keep going, keep fighting the good fight, as Adriana said, and believe in yourself. When you're scared as to whether or not you should say something, just say it. Just say
Yes.
the thing, do the thing, try, go for it.
And
Yes.
can I just say that none
Absolutely.
of us have life figured out? I think, I think that's like a really big misconception that people are going through life and they've got it all figured out. No, we don't. I think we're all in the same boat and trying to make the most out of each and every day. And and yeah, again, give yourself the space and grace to
Yes.
just figure it out, and you're
Yes.
gonna be fine. You're gonna be okay.
Exactly. Lots of
Mhm.
lessons learned and earned, and everyone's doing the best that they can with what they have. So let's be kind to ourselves and kind to others, and grace for ourselves and grace for others. And Susan, you are absolutely right. You are not alone. We're in this journey together and we'll figure it out together. With that, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. For my followers, for Ariel, Adriana, and Susan, and Medallia, and Chris, thank you so much for partnering with NAWSP, helping to level the playing field for women in sales and to help women in sales reach the top. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.